information is that this is really a very exciting project. I've been involved in satellites and all these visionary things coming out of Silicon Valley. So when I looked at your what you're trying to do and where you're going and your background, and I want to say, I mean, what a fantastic background. This is Mark Rigola, right? Did I pronounce it right? Rigol, okay. Now he's the CEO of LeoSat Enterprises. That's what we're talking about today. And this executive in satellite industry has 22 years of experience in telecom and satellite sectors, and he was actually advising satellite operations in private equity funds, as well as being co-founder of Kavicic. Is that correct? Did I say it correct?
Pacific, yes.
Okay. It's a very promising satellite broadband to home startup. But look at his background. You know, even before, he was CEO of O3B Networks, another visionary project. He was able to raise $1.2 billion to fund the constellation of satellites that provide affordable trucking and mobile backhaul capacity in developing countries. And of course, he also was a chief financial officer and member of the executive committee of SES, the world's leading satellite operators. So, without further ado, I have a few questions for him.
Sure.
And you know, I'd like to start out with kind of having you, I know we talked a little bit about your background, but if you could tell us a little bit more about your background and experiences.
Okay, great. So yeah, I had at least 22 years in the telecoms industry, which has been an interesting period. So I was in fixed and mobile telephony for the first 10 years or so, and then had the opportunity to join SES, which rolled me into the satellite FSS arena. That was fun, especially working with the number 2 then, but it became the number 1 in the world. And then working with Romain Bausch, I was his CFO then. We took the decision to take this bold proposal to the board for SES to become the first FSS operator that would invest in a non-GSO constellation. And so when there was an opening there for the CEO position, I took the leap and jumped over. So that was a hell of a ride. But we got the funding in. Since then I've been doing some fun stuff, as you mentioned. And when the 2 founders, who are the true visionaries of LeoSat, asked me to try and operationalize the project that they had, turn it into a company, get it funded, I joined LeoSat and haven't looked back since.
Okay, excellent. Well, you know, I always think that individuals who do the things that they do in the satellite industry and really make realities visionary. So I consider you a visionary. Okay, your venture is planning to launch a constellation of as many as 108 LEO communication satellites. Can you give us an extent of the strategic agreement that you entered with GlobalSat Group, which is the leading Pan-American satellite service provider?
Yep. Well, we don't like to talk about details of customer contracts, but I mean, GlobalSat is a very known quantity in this industry. We're very honoured that they have become one of our early customers. Several years before we will be launching the constellation. It's great, and it helps in the equity and debt funding process. It helps to have partners like this who, by signing an agreement, kind of validate what we're doing, and it enhances even further the credibility of LeoSat. So great partners, great to have Mr. Palacios on board, and given their geographical footprint, I think it's kind of self-explanatory what we want them to do and where they think they can use us. But it's a great partnership, and we're happy to have.
Excellent. How will you compete with similar space ventures? As you know, I'm out of Silicon Valley, and we went from chips to cars, to rockets, to constellations, maybe made out of paper. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. There was a MEO-LEO panel here at the conference in Washington yesterday, and I think the theme was very much that the 5 panelists all agreed that there are different applications that will be served by each different constellation. Our constellation is very much enterprise grade, very high end, high capacity, ubiquitous coverage. We can plant beams anywhere and take enormous amounts of data from A to B directly, highly securely, and so on. Other companies like OneWeb are going more after the residential broadband, so we don't compete at all.
Right.
Then there's Matt Desch was there as well with Iridium, which is more of a voice and low data rate network, where we see huge complementarity between LeoSat and Iridium. And so I could go through the whole list, but it's not because 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these constellations will get launched that there will be overcapacity in any particular market, because each system has been designed to do something different.
You know, that's a great insight. I'm really glad you share that with us, because it puts everything in perspective. So thank you. This is a little bit longer question, but I'll jump into it. Using optical inter-satellite links and operating in polar orbits at an altitude of 5 times closer to the Earth than the MEO orbit, can you further clarify the satellites creating fiber-like symmetry connectivity with speeds of up to 1.6 GPS and even 5.2 Gbps where needed? If you need me to answer that, repeat it, but I will.
No, that's okay.
Okay, good.
So the design of our system is such that it responds to a very real market need. Our system is based on a proven bus, so it's not a CubeSat. Our satellites weigh 1.25 tons. They generate a payload power of 2.5 kilowatts. So this is almost small geo-like satellites, not nano or CubeSats, because we want to provide an enterprise-grade service to our large customers. And by the way, we think we'll probably never have or need to have more than a few thousand customers. So we're not a mass retail or whatever product. We're high-end government agencies, big multinationals, banks. Those will be our customers. So this system was designed by one of our founders, who was a data network manager for 17 years at Schlumberger in North America, and he, his day-to-day life for those 17 years was patching together networks with a bit of fiber here, a bit of VSAT there, some DSL. So he lived through the pain of having this patchy kind of infrastructure to build his networks for Schlumberger on. And so when he left, one of the things he set out to do was to design the solution for this. Not starting from a satellite background, his first assumption was maybe not to need a satellite based network, but if you want to be high capacity, ubiquitous, highly secure, and so on, satellite is probably your best bet. Then he came to the conclusion that interlinking satellites in these polar orbits would give an optical network in space, because these are laser connections. And so instead of having terrestrial fiber, which is available in some places and not in others, our system provides fiber-like connectivity from anywhere a customer asks us to plant a beam to anywhere else, which gives you the security, because a bank, say HSBC London, can connect to HSBC Hong Kong over our network, rooftop to rooftop, without touching any third-party network. Which gives us a reliability and a security which is second to none. Because we're a constellation with at first 78 satellites, but one day up to 108, we have redundancy built into the system, because any place on Earth has at least 2 and up to 5, 6, 7 satellites in view. So if there's a problem anywhere, we can reroute traffic quite easily. And so all these attributes make it a fantastic system that government users like for its security, for its ubiquity, for its high throughputs. We're talking per beam throughputs of up to 1.6 gigabits per second. And the high capacity beams, which are more concentrated, there we can go up to 5.2 gigabits per second, and that does simply not exist via satellite today.
Yeah, it's really exciting the way you gave a conceptual view of the architecture and the security issues, and why you actually went with that type of architecture. It makes a lot of sense as well. I think especially on the security side. So that's a real key benefit. Of course you know that, right? Can you outline the advantages that LeoSat will provide for terrestrial users?
Yeah. So our sales guy has developed this little acronym that works for me. It's CURLS, So we have more capacity than any other satellite system. It's fiber-like in its throughput. Ubiquity, we're truly ubiquitous. We can plant a beam over the Antarctic just as well as we can over Wall Street and serve it with exactly the same type of quality of service. The R is rapid deployment. If you want to bring up a system which is fiber-like through a terrestrial connection, you have to trench or string fiber, so it takes years to reach certain places on Earth. We can bring it up overnight. The redundancy is the second R in curls that I mentioned, so we always have multiple satellites in view. Then the low latency, being 25 times closer to Earth than GEO and 5 times closer than O3b, which is the only MEO system at the moment. Gives us latencies that are 25 times and 5 times better than people who operate from those orbits. And then obviously also, because our system doesn't rely on hubs or gateways, because we're going rooftop to rooftop through laser links, light in space travels 50% faster than it does through glass. And so over longer distances, intercontinental links, we're actually faster than fiber. And that again is very exciting for us and for our customers, because this is the first time that a satellite system can actually beat fiber at its own game. Because people always like their fiber because it's so fast, and we can trump that.
I like fiber. I don't like DSL. No.
Yeah, well, you'll like satellite.
I like satellite. Right.
And then the S is the security.
Yes, of course.
Which is already mentioned. So curls, that's what we sell.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that some customers value the capacity. Others need the ubiquity. Some people really adore the security. Almost no one needs all 5 or 6 of these attributes, but it's like a menu, and people say, I really need you guys for this, that, and that. And so we have a very rich and interesting sales discussion with our customers. We're not just selling capacity.
Sure.
It's very differentiated as an offering.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And one of the segments that you're targeting, of course, is the U.S. government, correct?
Sure.
And can you give us an idea of the needs of this segment that you will meet? I think you mentioned some of them. What advanced security technologies will be required to provide for that segment?
Yeah. So you have the physical layer of security, which is the rooftop to rooftop, no third-party network. So you're not handing off, you're not going through switchboards, or God knows what. So there's that, but then there's the encryption. We can accommodate, we can use our own encryption, or we can accommodate anybody's desired encryption. Our satellites, just the router on the satellite, just looks at the label of the packet and says, this is HSBC Bank or whoever, and it's going to Hong Kong, and relays that message, that packet to the next satellite. So it's not dynamic routing, it's pre-programmed, planned routing.
Okay.
With a secondary and tertiary routing in case there is an issue somewhere.
Right.
But so you get really fast and highly secure from anywhere to anywhere, and obviously government agencies adore this. Not only military applications, but also we're talking to ministries of foreign affairs who want to build a high capacity embassy network for their country, and so also here in the US. Military applications like being able to fly a drone on the other side of the planet with a latency of 125 milliseconds to here on the East Coast is something people positively really adore as something that can really enable them to do stuff more precisely and get the video here quicker and be able to observe and intervene faster. Lives are at stake here, so being able to save half a second can often make the difference between mission success or failure.
Well, thank you again, Mark. How has LeoSat tested the point-to-point latency of 100 milliseconds for New York to Tokyo?
Yep. So we simulate these things. You can model it because it's physics. So we have this optical network in space with known distances between the various satellites at the various planes at any point in time. So you just simulate where the satellites will be, and you calculate the physical distance. The speed of light in a vacuum is a known number, and the connection up and down from planet Earth to our constellation is in Ka, which is RF, so that's also a speed of light. Then with the hops between satellites, you add a millisecond here and there, and so you can just do the calculation. You don't need necessarily to have the constellation up and have simulated in real life to be able to come up with these calculations. So part of our commercial discussion with all our customers obviously is to show them that calculation and the numbers.
Okay.
It's an important part of the sales process.
Okay, excellent. Well, you know, you're actually developing the satellite systems in conjunction with a European space agency. Which one is that?
Yeah, so our manufacturer of the constellation is Thales Alenia Space.
Okay.
It's a Franco-Italian multinational. They are simply the people who have most experience building constellations. They were and are the supplier of O3B satellites. Interestingly, they are now launching with Iridium Next the new generation Iridium satellites, which are also built in France.
On SpaceX, right?
Yes, indeed. So they've just launched a few weeks ago the first batch of 10, and working towards the next batch of 10. So the point is, I like to de-risk new stuff. No one likes risk, and space ventures are always inherently risky. So you try and amortize as much risk as possible.
Sure.
By the time we will be bending metal building our satellites, Thales Alenia will have built more than 100 of these satellite buses. The payload we need is obviously different than what Iridium or O3B is using, but even there are certain similarities. So the heritage of this satellite platform will be second to none, and the teams in Toulouse and in Cannes and in Rome who build these will have worked together on more than 100 of these platforms, which from a risk amortization perspective is just fantastic.
So there's two important questions. How are you going on the funding? Do you have 50% of it or 100%, or where's that?
The problem with constellations is that you need a large amount of cash because there's many satellites involved. So our peak funding requirement is 3.6 billion, which is 3 times as much as we had to raise at O3B. But we get like 10 times as many satellites. So you get the economies of scale, but it is a large chunk of capital. Thanks to the fact that these satellites are going to be built in France, their export credit agency will be supporting the debt side of things. Which means we're looking at funding an equity check of 1.2 billion, just over 1.2 billion. We're now embarked on our Series A, raising our first 100 million to finalize the design of the satellites and the constellation, to build the design of the ground equipment, start building up our sales force, our technical teams, and so on. And so we're in the process of raising that Series A. Talking to several strategic investors, and probably rounding out that Series A club of investors with a few financial investors as well.
Excellent. So in the launch perspective, when do you think all of these elements will come together? The manufacturing of the birds and the launch vehicles, and get everything, and also locational. How long is that going to take before the first launch?
Yeah. So sort of point zero for us is when this Series A is closed, because then we can really get working with large numbers of teams of engineers, both at Thales and the ground segment providers internally as well. Then, assuming the funding gets done sometime before the summer this year, we should start launching the constellation proper in 2020. Looking at finalizing the whole launch by 2022. One of the great things about our system is that in terms of revenue generation, we don't have to wait until all satellites are launched before we can deliver a service. Because we're in this polar orbit, once we've populated one plane with its 13 satellites and one spare, we can start delivering a service to very high latitudes on the globe, continuous service. And we can also provide a twice-a-day sort of batch processing service as the Earth spins, turns underneath our constellation. And then you populate the second plane, third plane, and the coverage just creeps down to the equator. And at 54 satellites we have global coverage, and the 78 number is useful to us because from that point we can offer the redundancy, because then also at the equator, where the Earth is widest, we can offer the 2 satellites in view at all times.
So I want to get back to the launcher. Who's going to do the launching? And because are you going to be launching one satellite at a time, or are you going to have multiple satellites?
So our satellites are slightly bigger than the Iridium satellites. Iridium is launching 10 at a time on a Falcon 9.
Right.
Because we have more power, more payload power, we have more solar panels, so we can only stack 4 around a dispenser, but in 2 layers, so that's 8
Okay.
on a Falcon 9. Depending on the vehicle, on an Atlas we could probably do more than 8, on an Ariane possibly as well. So here we haven't made a decision yet who will be launching. Our satellites, from a risk perspective again, having some launch diversity makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So you don't rely just on one. On the other hand, you probably get a better price if you do a bulk
Right.
deal.
Okay.
So that's the thinking process
Sure.
and the negotiation process we still have to go through.
Yeah, that's certainly realism. Well, I'm going to kind of end it with really asking you if you have any final comments. I think you've given us a lot of insights, and personally, sitting here, I'm really excited. I would like to join your team if I could, if I was an engineer. But okay, so do you have any final comments?
Yeah, the satellite industry is going through a bit of a period of doom and gloom because all the traditional FSS operators have got what they euphemistically call negative revenue growth.
Okay.
This revenue decline. So yeah, when you talk to CEOs, they're all thinking, on the one hand, wow, my existing business is going down the drain, or is at least not growing, so bad. But it creates positive momentum because people do realize they need to do something else than they have been doing traditionally. So much more openness to talk to people with new ideas like ourselves, which is very refreshing. I think 10 years ago that would definitely not have been the case.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm very pleased about that. It's been a busy week for us here at the show because the whole industry is here. So we've been talking to investors, suppliers, and so on. So it's been an exciting, tiring week. We're making good progress and look forward to being able to announce some real positive news in the coming months.
Good. Well, Mark, I want to thank you very much for your time. On behalf of GMCStream, thank you again.
Thank you.